glad to see everybody today. I'm glad also that it's not as overflowing as it was yesterday. But I gotta say, man, last time I've been in front of this many white people, it was at a Brady Bunch convention. No, I'm just kidding. It's all good, y'all. No crazy stuff like that. Anyway, good to be here and good to see all of y'all out there. Now, word of the day, which everybody seems to know, is inflation, right? I'll show you how we beat that. Because you've seen it bad over the last year, but it's only going to get worse this year. From the top of my head, I could probably fill volumes with the reasons why. We're going to cover some of those in the beginning, but more importantly, we're going to show everybody in this room how we at Perma Pastures Farm have been doing this for a very long time, for years, and just now the methods we use are starting to take root because it's not so convenient anymore to go to your co-op and places like that, you dig? All right, with that said, we're going to kind of move on. Was anybody in here yesterday? Okay, that's good. I thought she was putting up her hand, but that's my wife and son over there. Like, yeah, I hope you were here yesterday. So, well, first of all, give me a second. Let me just come out of these duds a little bit. It wasn't quite so hot until I got in here. So, background, as far as me, came from a very dysfunctional family. My family put the funk in dysfunctional, believe me. Both parents convicted felons. Myself and my 5 brothers raised by a grandmother. I didn't say any of that to make anybody feel sorry for me. I said that to empower you. Because if somebody that came from where I came from can do what I'm doing and what my family's doing, then we all should owe no debt to our destiny. You dig what I'm saying? Okay. So yeah, we don't want to go to our graves wishing that we're all going to have these long lists of things we've done. But as far as my background, yeah, that's where I started, but that wasn't licensed to end there. So very dysfunctional place. Only saving grace at the time was to join the U.S. Army. I became an Army Sapper, Airborne Army Sapper. In addition to that, I got out. A whole lot of stuff between there and now. Became an IBEW journeyman electrician, and I still am. Also a butcher. I'm a butcher that was trained by Michelin star chefs. That's a whole nother class altogether. And we do butchery classes. And in fact, we got one next weekend that we're participating in. Also permaculture designer. My wife and son are all permaculture designers as well. My son, instead of sending him off to college, we sent him off to Australia to learn under the very best, under Jeff Lawton. He's worked with Joel Salatin. He's worked Michelle's worked with Greg Judy. These are all people we're going to talk about in a minute. So instead of us putting our resources to get him in a degree that he may or may not like or love, because he had a full academic ride to college, but he dismissed all that to go pursue what he really wanted to do, which is what we do now. So that's how we did all that. As far as my background, look, I guess some of it, I don't really like to talk about me so much. In fact, there's a little bit of embedded video we have in here, and I ain't even watching or listening to me, so I don't know how anybody in this room is tolerating it. So with that said, my background is less important for what it was than for what I'm doing right now. Okay, let's just jump right into it. Yesterday, I spent more time on the current issues. Look, I don't need to do all that because everybody knows what it is. You know what the problems are, but I'm just going to kind of tap on them a little bit, and then we're going to talk about real solutions, okay? So, current feeding methods that, I don't care if you have chickens, pigs, horses, dogs, cats, and yes, we feed our dogs with stuff from the farm. We can even get into that. We're going to leave hopefully more time for Q&A this time than I did yesterday. Yesterday I had to hurry up and get out of here. We had a bull. We had to get moved out to Burnsville. So we had to get out of here and get on the first thing smoking back home. But today, it's on. So this is where we currently get our grub, right? Tractor Supply, places like that. Now, has anybody heard the latest news about Tractor Supply feed? Yeah, what was the deal?
Chicken feed.
There you go. Chicken feed. Now, is that true? Well, we have Mike Adams from naturalnews.com that tested he has one of the best labs on the planet, tested every bit of that, every brand at Tractor Supply. Turns out, all of them were not awful, but let's just call them the cream of the crap. They weren't great, except for the organic brands. They actually were organic. but the rest of them weren't as bad as everybody was letting on. So either that story was highly contrived, which is entirely possible, or maybe our methods aren't on point.
I've also heard that Purina, like from somebody who actually worked for Purina, which makes the Tractor Supply feed most of the ones that they carry, that essentially due to like supply chain issues, Purina has started outsourcing to other like manufacturing plants, and so there's just a huge quality control. Like, so some of the
we're going to talk about that.
Some of the Tractor Supply bags you get will be what they say they are, that are produced in certain plants, and then other plants are going to be
absolutely. And we're going to cover. I'm glad you pointed that out, because we're going to go into greater detail on that. As far as because we're going to spend less time on what the problems are, we're going to concentrate on solutions. That's what we do, right? That's what we do. Permaculture, earth care, people care, abundance given to the previous two. That also means solving problems, okay? So one of the other places you go is your local feed stores. Okay, it's maybe a better version of a Tractor Supply, but essentially, like she just said a moment ago, they all kind of get it from the same place. It's kind of like the American media. Here in the United States of Amnesia, we have like all this diversity of news that we get, right? But they're actually owned by 3 different interlocking BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. They own them all, and they have interlocking directors. Well, it's the same thing with the feed stores. It's really not much different, okay? Co-op, probably if you got to buy stuff off the shelf, a co-op is not your worst option, simply because, well, they're local. There's a place down the road from here. In fact, our farm is, as a crow flies, maybe 8 miles from here, that way. And there's a place right around the corner called Smiley's. There's no sign there. It's a little mom and pop operation. And literally, you can go in there, buy your feed in bulk, save a couple of bucks, but at the end of the day, you're all getting it from the same place. Okay? It's like one of Hitler's henchmen once said, a media system should be an ostensible diversity that conceals an actual uniformity. I'll say it another way. An obvious diversity that conceals an actual uniformity. That's the same thing that happens right there in our supply chains. We think we got choices, but really, Coke and Pepsi are owned by the same BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. You dig?
Even as far as Epsom salt is packaged right
exactly.
here in Haywood County, the biggest in the Western Hemisphere, and they all package Dr. Teal's, Publix, Ingles. It's all Epsom salt.
Touche.
So you're paying $20 or $5.
And you know where you really see that? In my former career as a journeyman electrician, which I never gave up. I mean, I just work on my own behalf now. I've worked in a lot. I've done industrial work all throughout this country, and that's exactly what you find out. You go to places like Unilever, and all these different brands that you thought were separate are all manufactured under the same roof. But we'll move on. Okay, cost of the current methods. Okay. Tractor Supply, local feed stores, co-ops. Okay. Is anybody in here raising animals right now? I don't care from a dog, parakeet, whatever. Have you noticed the cost of that food rising?
Yes.
Okay, when I first got into this game, you could buy chicks through a hatchery for 25 cents a piece. Anybody know what they're going for right now? $5 if you order them through the mail. And now I'm talking like decent kind of stock. And even when you get it from a hatchery, it's never all that wonderful to begin with. So, the cost of all these different things is pretty much the same. I mean, you're going to save a little bit of money at a co-op. And if you're getting organic feed, yeah, you're going to save a little bit of money there if you get it from a co-op and you get it in bulk. But at the end of the day, there's a reason why at our farm, I'm just going to save the punchline right now. Why am I standing here in front of you? Why am I the subject matter expert on this? We've been doing this a very long time. And people think I'm lying. That's part of why we started a YouTube channel, to prove it. That yes, we raise our chickens, our meat birds, for free. Actually, we make money on the deal. We raise our eggs and our egg layers for free. We raise all of our ruminants. They can be raised for free. And I'm going to give you some methods on how to do that, whether it's sheep, goats, cows, raised for free, just using good methods. And this is one of the most astonishing things that people didn't even believe. In fact, it was so bad, I had to lie. I didn't have to, but I did. I made a video, how we raise pork for 31 cents a pound. Because I didn't think for a moment anybody would ever believe that we actually raise it for 21 cents a pound. And it would even be free if we were to farrow our own pigs. So that's why I'm standing in front of everybody today. This is why this same class, the same butchery, the same things I tried to teach 8, 10 years ago would never take root. They are now, because all of us recognize the signs of the times, and we know that the current model is not working. Remember, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a sick society. Anybody agree with that? So, you know, sticking with what we currently do isn't going to work out. So the supply chains, going right back to what both of you actually said, it's kind of cool. I like the crowd I'm in, because you're kind of covering the slide before I even got there, but you grease the skids to make it work, okay? So here's how the supply chain works. Let me first back up and tell you how the pig, if you were to go down to Ingalls down the road here, and you were to buy bacon off that shelf, you want to know how that worked out? And I'm giving you a very small example of that. Right now through Smithfield, you take all these pigs, they'll slaughter them, gut and eviscerate, put them on a ship, take them over to China, have them processed, and doing who knows what, put them back on that ship, bring them home, put them in a truck, bring them to the store, and then you bring it to the house. Does that make sense?
No.
Right. There is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a sick society, right? And I didn't say that. There was an Indian doctor, very wise guy, that said that when asked about a series of other questions, but it applies here. So if this is the current paradigm that we're using in the feed that we use, it makes no sense to anybody with a thinking brain to think, okay, well, this is a really crappy method. It's like a person saying, okay, you know what, man? My wife ran off with a go-go dancer. Life sucks. Man, I'm really in the dumps. And then, you know what? I took up drinking and everything just worked out. Never in your life have you heard that. So why on earth do we do the same exact thing as it applies to raising our animals? We do it because it's been the only method we've known. But this is the supply chain. That's basically how it goes. And then, not to mention all the fuel that it requires. And we wonder why inflation is only getting worse when every single bit of it is tied to some extent or another to petroleum. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Okay, so commercial feed quality. We just recently talked about that. And then you covered the other one about, or one of you covered the other one about fillers. There was a video not long ago. It became very viral. This brother was in, I want to say it was Michigan. He was literally working in a pig pellet producing plant. They were dumping more plastic in there than there was organic material. Anybody seen that video? Yeah. They were feeding that plastic and everything else to the pigs, and this guy is incredulous. He can't believe that this is going on, but I'm here to tell you. As a journeyman industrial electrician, I've worked in a lot of these kinds of places. I've worked in some of these CAFO, not CAFO houses, but where they process these animals. You would never, ever again eat McDonald's hamburgers if you saw the process that I've seen. Because I've worked in these places. I've done industrial work in these places. They have zero concern, and then the treatment and how these animals are done, you know. Our philosophy, we echo what Mark Shepard says, that our animals only have one bad day. Better still, when it's done on farm, they don't even know it's happening. Because if I can't ethically, if I'm a meat eater, then I feel the moral consistency to go out here and see that animal from the beginning to the end and know that its life was heaven on earth before it had to go away. If you're into that sort of thing. If you're not, I understand too. But that's why we do it all on farm. That's why that's part of why I became a butcher. There's a host of other reasons as well. Okay, so what else is in there? Pesticides. Do I even need to explain that to this crowd? GMOs. Okay, let me just stop there for a moment. Everybody heard about this train derailment up there in Ohio, right? My son and I were just 100 miles away from there. What was it, last week, I think? Last Monday. Okay. Anybody know the parallel? Actually, I won't ask you that rhetorical question. I'll say it another way. Okay, so what went on the ground? And then when they set that stuff on fire, depending on which expert you listen to, what do they got floating all throughout the air? Dioxins everywhere. You want to know what it was we dropped all over Vietnam during the Vietnam War? Dioxins in the form of Agent Orange. To this day, whereas at least radiation, you know what the half-life is, we don't even know how long this stuff lasts in the environment. And to this day, birth defects off the charts with Agent Orange spraying that we did over there in Vietnam. Well, you know the company that was responsible for that? Anybody? Bayer. With Monsanto. Monsanto. The same company that we now trust to produce our food. That's like putting your junk in a bear trap, for crying out loud. I mean, that makes no sense on anybody's reasoning. I mean, honestly, does that make any sense? We got the same people that provided this poison, and then go on, when you talk about there, who do you think created Zyklon B in World War II? And these people are now making our pharmaceuticals and all this other stuff, and I'm supposed to dispense with my own common sense with their appeal of authority. So, GMOs, I know in this crowd, you're at the organic grower school for crying out loud. I don't need to tell you about the dangers of that. Also, inadequate protein carbohydrate mixtures. That may be part of what's happening with some of these birds. Like you were mentioning a moment ago, when they're putting these batches together, they supposedly have quality control, but they don't care. The only thing they control and the only thing they care about, in many cases, is their bottom line, which isn't yours or mine. Okay, so now we're going to start talking about solutions, and I'm going to have to go to the blackboard here. Now, I'm going to tear this off. Okay, no, I'm not. Okay, we talked about where I spent more time on this other part yesterday. I'm going to get down to brass tacks and spend a great deal of time on the solutions. I don't need to talk about problems in this crowd, because everything I've said thus far, I bet 99% of the people in this room already know it. Okay? So we're going to talk about solutions. So remember, I told you you can raise all your ruminants for free. Okay, if you were to drive around here, visit every single farm, and because I live in this, not in this town, but I live in this county, I can tell you what you're going to find by and large. Despite this being a hotbed of homestead activity and all the other stuff, you know what you're going to find? Let's say it's a person that has cows. You're going to see, let me know over there if you can't see this, you're going to see a giant field. And you're going to see cow, 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 and cow, okay? They're going to all be in this open field like that. Now, remember what we talked about being well adjusted to a sick society? This in no way replicates the way nature would have done it. In no way would it have happened that way. Let's say these were buffalo, and let's say this were 1,000 acres. Let me tell you how they would have done this. So, this 1,000 acres, and we say whatever group of buffalo we have, they're going to stay here. They're going to wipe it out. Then they're going to move here, here, here. You get the point. By the time they get back to here, not only, because we are not in the sustainable, you hear that word thrown around a lot, sustainable? No. You're in this classroom, we ain't talking sustainability. We're talking about regeneration. Take a look at that shirt. Okay, let me make sure I got the right one on. To kind of spell it out for you? Anybody disagree? Well, I don't mean you, but we as a people. So we ain't talking about sustainability. We're talking about regeneration. Because we don't want to sustain. Remember, it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a sick society. We got to move past that. Here's how we do it. And it's simple. Now keep in mind, each element that I'm talking about would require an 8-hour class. My idea here is not to make you fluent necessarily, but to make you conversational. Okay? This is like, yeah, that's all we're looking to do. So that's how nature would have done it. So instead of the farmer John Brown over here doing his thing, just putting these cows in the open field, what we're going to do is use technology to a certain extent, and we're going to make grazing cells. And you'll look at the names on the board, you'll understand where this is all going to make sense here in a minute. So, first one I got up there, Alan Savory, South African. Dude killed so many elephants it would floor you. He found Jesus, so to speak, realized this is a very bad thing that I'm doing. And so he took some of the older works and realized, and this is in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, literally said, okay, we got to find a better way. And then all of a sudden, he was roping off these areas with electric wire, putting the animals in here. Got here. And then all of a sudden, in these barren, desolate parts of the planet, he's finding out that not only was it improved, the microbial life had improved as well. We'll talk more about that later. So by the time he came around, he's like, okay. So then, all of a sudden, you got other people like Greg Judy in Missouri, probably one of the best on the planet, if not the best, when it comes to moving herds. Now, as permaculture designers, we consider ourselves kind of like a decathlete or a mixed martial artist, all right? So here's what I mean by that. So a decathlete, you have 10 events in the Olympic Games, right? And you got a coach for each one of those events. That's how we do it in permaculture. At least that's how our family does it. So, You have a track coach, you have a javelin coach, you got all these. View these people, and the ones I'm going to talk about before is nothing more than coaches in a particular discipline. That's what you ought to look at. So Alan Savory, Greg Judy. There's a bunch of different ways you can go about this. At the end of the day, if you can keep your animals moving, even if you're not doing it wonderfully or perfectly, if you can keep them moving, you're going to create regeneration to a high extent. Okay. So here's a simple way to go about it. Management intensive grazing. Okay. So you go out there. Let's say your grass is yay high. All you need to do when you're starting out is let your ruminants eat a third, they stomp a third, and you leave a third. Okay? That's one method. There's another method where you let them absolutely decimate it down to the ground. It's a high intensity model. But you won't come back to that area until 90 days later or more. Whereas the eat a third, stomp a third, leave a third, you may be back there in 30 days. You see? But nature had an opportunity to not only fix that ground, but to put more organic life in the soil. Check out the work of Dr. Elaine Ingham. Freaking genius. Think about this. We got water problems that falls from the sky. We got energy that falls from the sky. And it typically hits the ground, hits the low spots, heads down to Missouri, and we do nothing. Whenever energy comes to our property, we only have three choices. We can capture it for a little while, we can deflect it, and then we can amplify it. Whether it's sunlight or whether it's water or wind, those are really the only choices you have. So the way it works right now in this very sick model that we have, it comes out of the sky and we do everything humanly possible to divert it down to the Mississippi. It doesn't make any sense, especially when you're using, now you're thinking, what does that have to do with grazing? Let me tell you what. For every 1% of organic matter that you put down in that soil, the water retaining capabilities for that same piece of ground is the equivalent of an Olympic-sized swimming pool per acre. That's for every 1%. So instead of letting that rain fall from the sky and just go on down the Mississippi, why are we not keeping it on our property? Because if I have more organic material in there, long drought events are less consequential. You dig? Makes sense, right? So nearly all of our topsoil is headed on down, is out in the Gulf of Mexico right now. But this, in a nutshell, is a massive strategy when it comes to feeding your animals for free. Now, I got on here Greg Judy. You're going to learn a lot about how you should rotate Joel Salatin. Anybody heard of him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. My idol. He's a friend and a mentor, and I'm going to be actually presenting with him a couple of months from now at the farm where you live event. A little side note here with Joel. I told you I came from a really messed up background. I don't mean to take a side road too long, but this is important, at least to me. And I told you we came from a messed up place, a whole story unto itself. I always thought for the longest time that if I ever do something, I gotta have all the I's dotted, T's crossed. Until I met Joel, and he said to an entire crowd, but I swear he was talking to me. And it may apply to some of you in here, so I'm gonna pass on to you because it was paradigm changing to me. If it's worth doing, then it's worth doing poorly at first. That gave me license to fail. This idiotic nonsense that I thought I had to know everything. Go out there, make colossal mistakes, but fail while daring greatly. You dig? That's how we do it. So back to the regular thing. I don't know if that rings to anybody else in this room, but it did with me. So you give yourself license to fail miserably. Just don't kill anybody. Jim Garris. Another way of feeding our animals for free. Jim Garris wrote a book called Kick the Hay Habit. If you want to see a video version like I'm standing in front of you right now, you can go to Stockman Grass Farmer and download the course there. It might be about $100. But really, what is that worth in comparison to knowing how to feed your animals for free? You're grazing animals. So in his book, basically, Kicking the Hay Habit, you set up your stocking density, no matter the animal or animals, to go through here. Now, what happens in the winter in most farms? They bring in hay, okay? Or they cut their own hay from their farm, which is a colossal mistake from a holistic grazing standpoint. And the reason why is you're taking the fertility off of your ground and just redepositing it. So if you got to bring in hay, bring it from somebody else's place. Case in point, we do a method for raising our chickens for free called the chicken tractor on steroids. When fall rolls around, leaves fall off the tree, they hit the ground. What do you think I do? The permaculture pimp daddy himself comes rolling through town, and I got my truck, and I'll explain that word. I pick up all those bags of trash they left on the side of their lawns. Because that's free carbon for me. That's stuff I didn't have to do. She does it too, right?
I have a Prius and I have shoved like 10 bags of people's mulch. I had this old Prius and I would be like, okay. And I'd like shove them in. That car died and my new one's too nice.
There you go. But the point being, and when I say the permaculture pimp daddy, pimp is an acronym. It stands for permaculture is my passion. It's to reach out. It's to reach out to those kids in the hood that look a lot like me. You dig? Kids out there that don't know that this is an option for them. And I don't care if it's the single mom raising 5 kids or it's the dad that just grew up in a screwed up place like I did. I'm like, okay, well, if somebody like me can do it and well, I won't even go into all that because I don't want to get emotional, but if somebody like me can do it, a kid out there who isn't necessarily going to resonate with maybe one of you, but when they see, oh, look at this brown dude, and he calls himself, ha ha ha, the permaculture pimp daddy, kind of has a ring to it. I don't do it all the time because I'm not crazy about the connotation of the word pimp, but if I can speak that language, it kind of gets me in the door. And I can tell you some testimonials of some kids that I know that have actually benefited from that. So anyway, going back to our grazing animals. So they're going through. We got Jim Garish that basically teaches you stockpile forage for the winter. What a concept. And he teaches you, it is so simple, it'll make your head spin. So instead of you even having to bring it, now you want to bring in hay anyway, because you never know. You never actually know what weather event may happen, and so you always want to have some back. So what you learn from Jim Garish is why I said get yourself some coaches out there, okay? Excuse me. What you're going to learn from Jim Garish is that you stockpile forage so you don't have to feed hay. What a concept! Because that's exactly how the wildlife did it before we were putting them in confinement. So what we're doing in permaculture is going out to zone 5, which is wilderness. How are you doing it, nature? I'm going to take that home and replicate it. You'll find out when you take a couple of steps towards nature every single time will come back to you. Let's say you took 5 steps that way, she's going to come back to you 6. But if you start trying to fight nature, she's going to steamroll you every single time, especially if you think you're doing it in a holistic method, because it don't work that way. And then you got to bring in a bunch of garbage. Okay, people like Mark Shepard. Oh shoot! I'm sorry. Didn't mean to jump over Jeff Lawton. Yeah, Jeff Lawton, probably the best permaculture designer in history. Sam, would you agree with that?
Yep.
So my son worked with him down there in Australia for a while, and so Jeff Lawton, same sort of thing when it comes to grazing. Instead of doing like, okay, so we got a big field like this, and let's say you don't necessarily want them, your paddocks may look like this, and then they go through a laneway, and then they hit another paddock. Maybe they hit a laneway, and they hit another paddock. This is very crude, but you get the point. It's telling you that you have other methods for arriving at the same place. People like Mark Shepard. The reason I'm bringing up all these people is because the method that we've designed at Perma Pastures Farm is a combination of everybody you see up there plus about 6 or 7 more, maybe more, than I'm able to discuss today. So, another field, Mark Shepard's method. So, you got contours on the land, okay? When you're seeing this, let's say it's going downhill like so, right? So, this is a very rudimentary thing. But Mark Shepard, can y'all see over here? Okay. So, if these are your animals, instead of going in straight lines, they're going to go around here. And these are tree lines right here. We'll talk more about that in a minute. So they go here. They go in and out of your landscape like so. So what I'm saying is there's no defined way of doing that. One of the most frustrating things that people hear in permaculture, and they detest it, is the words, it depends. It depends. Because which method works out for you? Is it Alan Savory, Greg Judy, Joel Salatin, Jim Garish, Jeff Lawton, Mark Udig? So you find out permaculture is nothing more than a toolbox. So we're pulling out the tool that makes sense. You got folks that say, oh, okay, you live in an area like this mountain behind us, okay? You're thinking, I want a swale. And everybody know what a swale is? It's basically a water harvesting ditch on contour. So it captures water. And they're like, okay, I want a swale. Well, I'm like, hey, bro, your grade on your property is too great. You can't have a swale. But I'll tell you what we can do. Maybe we might do some key line. That might work for you, because a swale could fill up, bowl over, kill everybody downstream because you put it in a place that didn't belong. So don't use the Alan Savory method when you should be using the Jim Garrish method. You dig? So it's taking the right dog to the hunt. Okay, other strategies in feeding them. Tree hay. All we know for sure, all the way back since the ancient Greeks, we're talking since Alexander the Great, and better still, all over Scotland, England, places like that. When I say tree hay, I want you to get used to a couple of terms. One is coppicing, which we're going to cut that tree down to the ground, and pollarding, which we're going to cut it about yay high. Why would we do that to a tree? Because there are some species out there that actually benefit from doing that. When you cut them back, they'll just keep coming back. But that is a constant food supply for your animals. Tree hay. A lot of us in America, in the United States of Amnesia, have never heard of these methods. But they're using them all over the world, in places, in what they choose to call third world countries. Well, they seem a lot more civilized than we do because they're still using these methods. And Michelle, she's really an expert at this. What are some of the trees locally that you've used to do that?
You can use poplars, oaks. Oaks are really good because they have a lot of tannins in them, so they'll help with parasites. One thing you want to stay away from is the mountain cherries. Those can be harmful to your livestock, but pretty much like your fruit trees, the nut trees, those are all good for tree hay.
So in addition to that, we're going to say, okay, remember, we're looking at feeding them for free, right? So tree hay. Oh, tell them also how you store it, how you collect.
So you can do it a couple different ways. You can just have them browse, like where you pollard a tree, you can have them browse it fresh, or to make actual hay out of it, you would cut it, bind it up into like what you're going to actually feed out. Hang it up in like a barn,
garage even.
Yeah, you could do that just to let it dry, and then you're going to feed it in the winter time to your livestock.
So I guess I'm a little confused. What exactly is tree hay? You said you cut.
Yeah, we'll cover.
Or you cut tall, but are we talking about a stump that then grows?
So when you cut down like black locust, for example, if you cut it like head height or even a ground height, the next year it's going to increase the growth in that area. So it's going to shoot out a bunch of like little sprouts, and they're going to have leaves on the end. So you just cut those little sprouts off and use them for tree hay, or have your sheep or whatever ruminants come and graze them directly.
So it's the gift that keeps on giving. That's the beauty about some of these methods. And like I said, we're not going to make you fluent today, but we are going to get you conversation, all right?
And how many years can you do that? Sorry, like how many years?
They've been doing it. I'm glad you brought that up because I'm glad you brought that up because there are trees, you can even probably find it on YouTube. There are trees that have been pollarded and coppiced. We can tell about the tree rings since the time Julius Caesar was running around on this planet. In fact, his invasion of Gaul, modern day France, look at the trees, and they've been checking out the rings on there, and they are astonished that they were wondering, well, how are they sustaining their animals? When Hannibal came from North Africa, walked over, came up through the Alps, and how did they do this? Tree hay. Tree hay. They've been doing this forever and a day. We're the only dopes on this planet that don't know about it. So that's what we're here to do. That's why we are congregated in this room, to learn these methods. Comfrey. Let me move on to that. Comfrey is a shrub, and it is a magical shrub. We are probably the number 1 and number 2 comfrey dealers in America. Almost sounds bad when you say that. Yeah, meet me out back and we'll give you a little bit of comfrey. So we sell a lot of comfrey. In fact, we're out right now because we process it responsibly. So until it's ready to give us new roots, we don't have any for sale. Even though everybody and their great-grandmother is hitting us up, when's comfrey for sale? When's comfrey for sale? We've been evangelizing the use of this stuff forever and a day. Can y'all give me a second while I get some water?
Yeah, it's like a little shrub that grows ground level. It gets about 3 feet wide. Are you guys familiar with comfrey? Well, there's a common comfrey that grows native to North America, and then we actually grow the Russian Backing number 4, which is less bitter to your animals that you would feed, higher in protein, so it's 14% protein, and highest allantoin levels as well, which is the healing aspect of comfrey. But it's a perennial. It keeps coming back. You almost can't kill it. But the Russian Bacchi number 4 also isn't like a running variety, so it's not going to spread out on you and get everywhere. This is a clumping variety, so it'll only spread if you go in there and run it over with like a tiller, or if you dig it up and just spread it yourself.
Now keep in mind also that the powers that shouldn't be, remember we talked about those companies earlier? They've hired their henchmen out there to go tell the whole world that comfrey will blow your liver up and kill you. Okay? We got videos on our YouTube channel, entire armfuls of this comfrey. Throw it out there to the chicken and say, okay, I dare you to die. Because they have it. But let me also say this too. I've never seen an animal eat something that would kill itself when it had availability of things that it could eat. So it will partake. Sean and Beth Doherty, which you'll hear me talking about in a minute. Sean and Beth Doherty, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but they should have videos of all these plants that are supposed to kill cows. And you see them over there eating them. But they know how to titrate this stuff for themselves. You drink too much water, it'll blow your kidneys up. So yeah, they're doing illogical tests that make no sense when it comes to things like comfrey. They're telling you it's toxic. Look, legally, we live in a very litigious world. So I'm not going to tell you go out there and just feed them comfrey, and you shouldn't just feed one thing. But our goal at our farm is to make this so ubiquitous that I can't sell it. That nobody could ever buy it from me because they'd say, hey bro, you got any comfrey I can get from you? Absolutely. Or maybe I don't. She does. She lives a block down the road. You go out there, pull that comfrey out of the ground, cut the roots off. One comfrey plant easily give you what, 50 to 100 cuttings off of it?
On average, 80 cuttings, which is 80 new plants. Also, comfrey wasn't demonized until they figured out how to synthesize allantoin. So once they figured out how to recreate or synthetically make allantoin, that's when they started saying it gives you liver toxicity.
Yeah, so these are the things that we want to do what you want, but we're telling you what we do. We grow more than anybody probably in this whole state. Maybe not, I don't know. I know more than anybody in this county. Can't sell it fast enough. Can't give it away. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can you still use the North American variety? Like, would you still recommend it?
You can. It's just a little bit. Some animals won't like it. They will get to a point where they will eat it, but it's bitter.
It's not as preferable.
Right, so you want that stuff that, they're going out there like, man, because we've got video after video of chickens eating this stuff like it's going out of style. So the powers that shouldn't be, they're going to constantly tell you that the things that we're doing here don't work. Well, we've been doing them forever and a day. So silvopasture strategies, silvopasture, let me just give you a brief example of what that is. It's kind of a combination of a number of things. Let's say these are all, look, I'm going to try to keep the laughter to a minimum. My handwriting and my drawing ability aren't wonderful, and my son's isn't a whole lot better either. You see him write, you'd swear he's writing ransom notes. So you got your animals. These are trees. You're looking down at it, okay? Silvopasture is basically an interaction between your animals and your forest. Symbiosis, right? So all they're going to do, make their way through here. Now they may have access to all these trees. They could be oaks, they could be nut trees, they could be any number of things. Depending on what animal you're using, depends on your strategy. Okay, we'll move on. Oh shoot, did I just mess up? Okay, cool. There we go. Strategies for pigs and chickens. We kind of covered your room, and it's in a very shotgun type of style. Like I said, that class alone, we're talking 8 hours. So, like I said, it's not to make you, we're just going to get you conversational. Strategies for pigs and chickens. And the reason, how many people in this room currently have chickens? How many are thinking about having chickens? How many have pigs? One person.
I want it.
2? Okay. What if I told you, and you're going to swear I'm crazy, but pigs are easier to raise than chickens?
Oh yeah, I believe it. She's so easy.
Light years easier.
I had chickens before her. We don't have chickens right now. We want chickens again for meat this time, but not it.
But they are all awesome. But the cool thing about chickens, and we're going to spend a little more time talking about them, is because chickens are the gateway drug to other animals, right? Or rabbits, Nobody just says, yeah, dude, I just got into this farming thing. I'm going to take up raising beef. Very few people do that, especially if you come from an environment like I did. My wife was raised in a farming community. I was not. Very much grew into this stuff, and when I say it is my passion, it really is, man. There's nothing on this planet. I feel like this is what I was meant to do. Not necessarily standing in front of a classroom, but teaching. Farming. Okay. strategies for pigs and chickens. We'll go back also to Jeff Lawton, Joel Salatin, maybe not Jeff Lawton when it comes to pigs, but the reason I'm pointing out the independent farmstead, Sean and Beth Doherty, they were literally, I think, 30 miles away from that train wreck up in Ohio. They wrote a book. It's called The Independent Farmstead, and I recommend, if anybody wants to learn some of these methods, I thought I invented what they had already written a book on. But the only downside to their system, and it's really not a downside, is that you do need a certain amount of land to make that thing work. And let me just kind of briefly tell you how it does work. In their book, like I said, I'm not the best drawing person in the world, but we'll just call this a cow. It looks like a beetle, but and a happy cow at that. Okay. So we got our jacked up looking cow here. Now I might be able to draw a bucket. Yeah. So that cow, here's how this method works. And this is beautiful, elegant. And I love elegant because really if you think about the definition of elegance, it means concise and simple. Despite what we really think the definition. Look it up for yourself, elegant. I looked it up right before this class. Make sure I had it right. Okay, so there you go. We get a bucket of milk, a lot of buckets of milk off a cow. Let's say you're getting just easy numbers, 10 gallons a day, right? How much do you, even if you have a large family, how many gallons of milk do you think you can drink with your family? Not much. Even if you're lucky with value adding, let's say you were to make cheese out of that and other value added products out of that, that cow, just one cow is producing a lot of milk. So what Sean and Beth came up with was like, because they're reluctant to use the word permaculture, and a lot of people are these days, and there's a reason for that. If you want to ask me later, I'll get into it. In their book, it's really all about permaculture, even though they don't use the word. But what they realized is, remember the ethics of permaculture, earth care, people care, abundance given to the previous two. So if I got all this extra milk, who should it go to? My omnivores, the pigs and chickens. Bam, they had this eureka moment, and that's exactly what they've done, and it's exactly what they do. So that's where they provide the protein and the fat for the pigs and chickens, right? And yes, chickens will drink milk and whey and all the other stuff. Despite what they say in the commercials, they are not vegetarians. They are, in fact, omnivores. So your pigs and chickens, they eat that byproduct. But also in that book, you're going to get a whole constellation. They grow in such abundance that it's going to blow your mind. One of them is Trombocino. One of the local varieties around here is a Cushaw squash. One of them is good to eat, tastes good, tastes great for you. Your animals will love it, but each one of them weighs about 30 to 40 pounds. And there's so many. And here's the best part about it. They did all the research to tell you that, hey, if this is your barn or your garage, you can take nearly everything they grow there with no refrigeration, stick it in your garage, barn, cellar, whatever, and it's going to last a long, long time. Over a year on most of them. Now, clearly for your property, and I'm just picking out things like Trombocinos, but check out that resource. Michelle, don't they have something online you can print off where it's a...
Yeah, they have like a PDF that you can buy. I think it's like foods or plants that you can grow to feed your livestock. Trombocino is one of them. Kale is another one. But yeah, they have that PDF.
So it's all there. These are things that are parasite resistant that not only you can eat. I mean, I don't need to tell everybody what things are costing right now in the store. You know. You wouldn't be here right now if you didn't see that there was a problem with the current paradigm. So, you're going to grow that stuff not only for your pigs and chickens, you're going to grow it for yourself. Once again, silvopasture strategies when it comes to pigs and chickens. Now, there's a reason why nobody has ever written a tell-all book like Raising Pigs 101. Yes, you will find a stories book out there, but the reason it doesn't work is because you got pigs, right? Or you got a pig. I guarantee you, her pig, the behavior of that pig from, let's say, a Yorkshire is not the same as a American guinea hog or a red wattle or whatever.
I have a Vietnamese potbelly, so she is way different than
right,
a
so
1,000-pound.
Yours is more a pet.
Yeah.
Which is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But the reason why there's no tell-all book, and don't let that turn you off of pigs, because like I said, pigs are easier to raise than chickens. Now, you don't want to go start out the gates with something with a known breed that might be a little bit violent. You don't want to start off that way. maybe just to kind of get your beak wet, start with something like an American guinea hog. They were almost extinct, but now they're becoming quite ubiquitous, okay? A lot of people that I know of right here were practically giving them away. So under Sean and Beth Doherty, anybody see the, I'm reticent to say this, but the flaw in their design? Because most people don't have access to a cow, you see? Yeah. That's the problem. Okay, that's where we come in. That's where our model and what we do eliminates the need for having that family milk cow. Because it's just not accessible to everybody unless you live on large acreage, or not even large acreage. The overwhelming majority of America lives in the city lot. So we had to develop strategies that not only work for us in the country on large acreage, but also for those that can be scalable. Whether you're in an apartment, maybe not an apartment for some of these methods, but you get the point. Whether you're in a city lot, there's a lot of this stuff that can absolutely work. So we'll move on down. Silvopasture strategies when it comes to pigs and chickens, especially pigs, they, depending on time of year, they will derive a ton of their food from the forest floor. Let me just give you a brief example of what I'm talking about. So imagine you're in a glen, or we'll just say a forest that has dappled sunshine that hits down below, okay? So now, let me just back you up. The classic way people raise pigs, they'll put them in a confinement area, just give them feed until it's time to take them off to the processor, right? Not the best way to do it. Confinement house, CAFO operations, man, you don't even want to know what that's like. They dock these pigs, literally cut off their tails because they go so insane inside those. This is the bacon you got right down here at the store at Ingles. They go so insane inside those facilities that they have to literally cut off their tails, or they will eat them off of each other and cannibalize each other. Same thing with the chickens in these confinement houses. They have to cut their beaks because they will literally kill each other. I mean, it's the natural reaction for anything put in confinement like that. But that's not what we're talking about. So pigs in the environment. First of all, you don't want pigs in a pasture. In most cases, unless you ring their noses, or unless you have what they call Idaho pasture pigs, or unless you have coonies, all of which are going to take 18 months before you can process them anyway. So I can give you a long list of reasons why you might want to reconsider, depending on your needs. But a typical area, forget this for a moment. Let's look at it like this. So, this is our pig paddocks, all the way through this area. And let's just say they're going to go from here to here to here to here to here. You get the point. Now remember with the ruminants, I told you just right off the bat, you're going to eat a third, stomp a third, and leave a third. Very different story when it comes to pigs. Because they don't operate that way. They're not just going to eat the grass. They're going to root. They're going to do other things. So what is my barometer? Whereas I know that I can go out there and say, okay, my cows and my sheep are all here. They've eaten the third, they stomped the third, and they leave the third. Oh, cool, I'll take them out. But what's my barometer when it comes to pigs? It's a feeder, typically. It's going to be, yeah, appears I'm somewhat proficient at drawing a cylinder. We'll call that a pig feeder, a dry pig feeder. Let's say it's 2 tons or a 1 ton feeder. Joel Salatin, the genius that he is, realized that the land has the perfect amount of massaging when this feeder is empty. So let's say I got 20 pigs in here. So I know when to move them when this pig feeder is empty. Because it's at that point when it becomes empty that they are going to over-till the land. Instead of them massaging the landscape, rooting up exactly what they need, and then you moving them out, they're now going to overdo it, and now you're going to bring in a bunch of briars and thickets and thorns and stuff like that. So that's the typical way. When this feeder's done, go to here. When that's done, so on and so forth, okay? But in an environment like we raise them, which is literally on the side of a mountain like this, where we are. We got videos on YouTube, numerous videos. We raise them in a very mountainous environment with a lot of trees. So, it takes a grazer's eye, what Joel Salatin calls a grazer's eye, before I determine I'm going to take them, let's say they're among these trees here, before I move them from here to here. I don't always get it right, and it's okay if you don't. Because honestly, I'm using my pigs. Before we bought this land over here, it was decimated by too many animals. Homesteaders can be the best thing that ever happened to a property. But you can also be a cancer on that property. because they've abused it so badly that there's briars and thorns and thickets everywhere. So you only got two choices in how to remove that. You got more, but I'm going to give you the two logical. You literally go up there yourself, you cut it out, and then get it out of there. Or I can let this pig do the pigness of the pig, and they go out there, root up all this stuff, tear up all this stuff, destroy all this stuff to a certain extent to where all I got to do is, oh, cool, thank you, pig. We'll pull this stuff out, pile it up, take it somewhere, do something else with it. Okay? So, these pigs, I'm letting that pig do the pigness of the pig. Meanwhile, it's getting fatter, it's getting larger, and it's living in bliss every single day of its life. So when it finally does get to that point where we decide to process this animal, it will have lived the most luxurious life. In fact, we feed our animals better than most people eat in America. I kid you not. All right, so silvopasture strategies, which we kind of touched on. Household food scraps, okay, that kind of speaks for itself. All right.
I have a quick question. I'm sorry, you had mentioned like the technique where you have a feeder in the pig pen. How much feed per pig? Because I assume, if you have 20 pigs and you only put like a 5-gallon bucket of feed,
yeah,
they're
right. So what we do is a really good question. So in that feeder, it's going to actually, you buy them in like 1 or 2 ton feeders. It could be a 500-pound feeder. So that's how you base it. But basically, an adult pig, and this is very general, will eat about 5 pounds of feed per day. So that's a good barometer when they grow up. And don't worry, because if you overdo it or you underdo it, they'll let you know. But they're very, very easy to work with. Okay, now we're going to get down to brass tacks. Remember, we talked about these solutions. Okay, breweries. Now, just bear with me on some of this stuff. Remember, we're going to replicate what Sean and Beth Doherty did, but without the benefit of a family milk cow. Because most of us just don't have access to that. This is a list of all the places I've gone. And I'm going to blow your mind with some of what I'm going to tell you. Breweries, easy enough. They got spent grain because they make booze there. Bakeries. Just did a video recently from West End Bakery right down in Nashville. In exchange, and I'm going to talk more about this, you make yourself a blessing for these people. In exchange for the electric work that I do for them because they can't afford to have it done, I get all their organic King Arthur flour made, biscuits, cupcakes, all the things that they can't sell or give away to homeless shelters. Because these people are so ethical, they don't even take this stuff. If they couldn't sell it off the shelf out front, they don't even give it to homeless shelters. So everything on the edge of a giant pan is usually kind of singed a little bit. It's not cool to put up in a butcher's case, and they're not just going to give it to the homeless because they're like, if it wasn't good enough for the people to come in and buy this, I'm not going to just. You see what I'm saying? That's the kind of ethics we're dealing with. Completely organic. That's one of the places I work with. Mom and pop restaurants. The reason I'm saying that, colleges and universities. Now, we're at a college right now, Mars Hill College. There's a college that I had access to, and I can still have it if I want it, and it's local. It's not Mars Hill. I'm going to leave that for somebody else in this room to work with. They were literally pulling out of that college, or rather university, 600 pounds of organic food waste per day. And this ain't the stuff that the kids are necessarily throwing in the doggone trash can. This is stuff in the kitchen that either went bad, didn't work out, and they were throwing it in a dumpster, and lo and behold, they're reaching out to the permaculture pimp daddy to see if I can come in here and find ways for them to keep from putting that in the dumpster. College is good 600 pounds a day, just one local university, but I got to keep that to myself. Public schools, and you see there I have elementary schools. There's a reason for that. Go to any elementary school. At the end of every day, do this experiment if you think I'm not telling you the truth. Go out there and look at the big blue dumpster out back, peek your head inside, and you're going to see that much milk added to that dumpster every single day. You're a taxpayer in that town. And don't tell me, oh, I live in a very rural place, it can't be done. Well, we did this in a little pissant town in the middle of Texas called DeKalb, Texas. A dump from one side to the other. Literally. Am I wrong?
Nope.
We were able to do this in places like that, and one of the places you can look at, public schools, particularly elementary schools, because they give them all the milk. Well, they got these standards that they got to adhere to. They put them in dumpsters, and you can be the one that intercepts that. There's another person that has a YouTube channel called Kentucky Sustainable Living. He's one of my students. gets all the milk from all the schools. He has so much food and stuff coming out of his eyeballs that he is literally, yeah, stay away from that Monsanto stuff. So he has so much coming out of there. He's considering starting a side business where he can practically give it to other farmers around him that are feeling the pinch of this stuff. How cool is that, y'all? Okay, food pantries and homeless shelters. The reason I'm pointing those out is because the only place food can go from there is in the dumpster. Be the person that intercepts it. Don't worry, I'm going to show you how to go about all this. Discount grocery stores, the same thing is they're in the same place as the homeless shelters and stuff like that, because from here it goes into the dumpster. Convenience stores. There's a guy, I told you about Smiley's grocery store, or farm store over here. There's this old boy, crazy as a three-headed cat. Drives around in this F-250. He's not a very pleasant dude, but every time you see him, the whole back of that truck will be piled over with bread. He gets it from these convenience stores when it goes bad. And he just drives around, kind of a shady thing he's doing, but he'll either give it away or give it to you for a couple of bucks. We're talking some pretty good, I mean, if you got to buy bread off the shelf, it's really not that bad. But anyway, he's there all the time. Very unpleasant person. I don't like him generally, but he had a great idea. You feel it. Asian stores. This is a big one right here. I won't tell you where it is because it's my honey hole. It's right there in Asheville. Yeah, I'm not telling you. So, and there's a reason for this, because I've given away some of these before, and then some of the people we used to go to church with ended up becoming my competitors, even though they had said, "Hey, Billy, it really doesn't matter, but where do you go?" And then all of a sudden they're getting the stuff that I told them about, even though they were not interested. So, you folks all look like very honest folks to me, but I don't trust them. No, really, I got more than I could possibly use. In fact, before I showed up here, 30 minutes before I arrived, I was literally working with my partners. It's in the back of my truck right now. You can go look. Asian stores. Check this out. There's a place, we make a product at my farm called bone sauce. We're the only people on the planet that make it. It's all natural deer repellent. It's the best thing on the planet. Now, I can't process enough animals responsibly to get the bones, but I work with these guys at the Asian store because I make this product, and once you put it on your trees, deer, rabbits, whatever, will not mess with these trees for, some claims are up to 50 years. It's an old Austrian thing. But I work with these people, and this is what we produce at the farm. We have this bone sauce. But I got to go to these guys because, let me just, a little side note, when COVID was ravaging this whole country and everything, these folks were unaffected. So next time that goes around, go here if you need to find groceries, because they weren't missing anything. But they have a large produce section because a lot of these Asian countries are closer to their food than a lot of us in the United States of amnesia, okay? So, they also have a lot of waste that they got to throw to their dumpster. But then, lo and behold, I'm already the best customer because I buy tons of bones. Got to make bone sauce. So when I approached them and said, "Hey, what are you doing with all this stuff, like the vegetables and stuff that you can't sell, that go bad?" And, you know, we practically had to draw pictures to one another because there's that communication breakdown. But we worked it out. He has a dumpster guy come out twice a week. Now he only has to have them once a week because I've now, in permaculture, we often say the problem is the solution. His problem is that he's spending money taking out dumpsters twice a week, whereas you got me rolling in there, taking the stuff that he doesn't no longer have to put in the dumpster. Now he only has to pay once a week. So I've been a blessing to him. I've been a blessing to the people at the mom and pop places, okay? To the bakery up there. And you don't have to have a skilled trade like I do to be able to use that as currency. Believe it or not, your time or your trade is worth more. Real quick, I'll get to you in a second, but real quick, for 1 gallon, because we have bees, 1 gallon of honey has yielded us probably how many thousands of dollars in product?
Yeah, I don't even know. We would make less from honey by selling it, like rather than bartering with it. We would make far less with honey.
We use that honey as goodwill. It has opened more doors than anything else. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. When you get like this produce from like the Asian stores, the grocery stores, how, I mean, obviously it's not fresh, otherwise they would sell it, but like how fresh does it need to be to feed your animals if it's started to rot, if it's stinking, if it's slimy? Like,
doesn't even matter, because in well, you clearly don't want to be giving
It's mold.
bad food
Yeah, like if there's mold
to your,
on it.
especially your pigs, but the chickens will definitely work around it. So if it's rotten, we'll talk about that here in a minute. The chickens won't mess with it. There's certain things, like I said, in a holistic environment, I've never seen an animal kill itself when it had availability of good stuff. So if it is rotten, throw it in there because we're going to, bam, you keep getting ahead of my dog. Okay, so how do you convince them? I'm trying to leave way more time for Q&A because I'm sorry, I'm packing a whole lot in there, y'all. But I hope some of this is taking root. So how do you convince them? Well, first of all, select the right time of day. If you're going to a restaurant, do not go in there outside of the hours between 2 and 4 p.m. because that's when they're least busy. Best day of the week, Tuesday. Okay? Tuesday between 2 and 4. So if you hit any of those places, that's when you go. When they say dress the part, I'll come to that in a minute. Briefly, tell them who you are, what you do. You got to make them excited about this. I guarantee there ain't a person in this room that's going to forget about me. I promise you. You're going to walk away from this conference, you're going to go away, but I guarantee you're going to remember Billy Bond, the permaculture pimp daddy. There's a reason for that. You make yourself memorable in a good way. So it's like why Forrest Gump was such a great movie. It made you laugh, made you cry. You know, you did all those things right there in front of that, in front of that screen. So you make yourself memorable. It could be with humor, it could be with whatever. But I'm telling you what, I'm going to go up to you. I'm going to go in between the hours of 2 and 4, and you're the person I got to convince to give me your food scraps, right? So there's a little script you can go about it. First of all, remember I said dress the part. I'm going to go ahead and do that right quick. This shirt was developed by a podcaster by the name of Jack Spirko. He heard me do this presentation at the Self-Reliance Festival in Camden, Tennessee. Had a great idea, actually a couple of them, and this was one of them. So, this shirt I have on right now has a collar on it. And you see CCC, Carbon Capture Composting, right? That's a company that does not exist. Does it matter? Dress the part. Shakespeare said it best, the apparel oft proclaimed the man. Okay? So there you go, carbon capture composting. The apparel oft proclaimed the man. So I'm going to go into you. If you want, go start an LLC, make it your own place. But I look official. Remember, I'm also a farmer, so I don't want to dress too nice, but I want to go up to there and say, hey, my name is Billy, I'm a Perma Pastures farm. We also have, I'm Billy with Carbon Capture Composting. All this stuff you throw in the trash, I want to make it into the world's best compost. As I've said this to him, there's a slight smile on my face the whole time. You know what? That's not contrived. I love what I do. So it's not hard to convince you. Even if you're going to tell me no, go pound sand, you're going to remember that I came in there, I looked professional, I came up and I said, hey, I looked you in the eye. Look, I know, these days it's more customary to try to talk to somebody like this, like not being offensive, but a lot of the IT folks, out there. You know how you have a extroverted IT person? Because instead of looking at his shoes, he's looking at yours. You get the point. I love IT people. Actually, this would not be possible without a lot of them. But the point being is that you go in there, make your own company up. It doesn't even matter. Look, at the end of the day, some say, well, what about the legality of it? Well, guess what? I don't obey unjust laws. I don't obey. If you tell me it's illegal for me to feed the poor, send my mail to the county jail because I'm not going to comply. You tell me it's wrong for me to show people how to feed themselves for free, send my mail to the county jail because I'm not going to comply. At the end of the day, I will go in there and I will talk to every single person I can. I will evangelize this because long before I was being paid to do this sort of thing, I did it. I would talk to my toll buddy. I would talk to anybody in the grocery store because this is my passion. I will speak to everybody, and it needs to be infectious in order to make this stuff work. So here's exactly what we need. We go in there, tell them how they benefit. Mr. Asian grocery store dude, I see you got a dumpster out there. I could probably keep you from having to take that thing out twice a week. Or, hey, you know what? Half these ceiling tiles are falling down in your restaurant. These ceiling tiles, I'm going to go in there and think, for $30 I could solve their problem in here. What if I were to change out all those jacked up looking ceiling tiles? I spent $20, but I got thousands of dollars worth of free feed out of the deal. Think of what problems they have. Look around their place. Okay, what if I made this deal? Every time I come to pick up your food, I'm going to sweep this entire area. I'm going to pick up all the trash around here. Is that worth it? I think so. I've done it. Or if they tell me no in the old days, I don't care. I'm going to jump in the dumpster and go get it myself. What are you going to do? You take me to jail. You have now got to answer for the fact that you took a permaculture pimp daddy to jail because he took food out of a dumpster to feed his compost pile. Because you're going to cover that in a minute. Do not tell them you're going to feed your animals. The answer will always be no. And definitely don't tell them you're going to eat it, because you're not. Even though one of the last videos I did was me eating a donut out of the dumpster, not out of the dumpster, out of the trash can inside this. It was a stage thing, okay? It literally was, but it was proving a point. She literally just dumped them in there, and I grabbed the one off the top and ate it in the video. Because if I eat it, then shouldn't my animals be able to eat it? Okay? But do not, in this litigious environment, do not tell them you're going to feed this to animals, or the answer is always going to be no. Guaranteed. Well, one more, and then let's hold everything till the end, because I'm going to try to get you. Besides, you're like every time I call on you, you're like the next slide I'm about to put up. So she's like reading my mind over here. So yeah, do not tell them you're going to feed the animals, because you're not even lying to them, and I'm not violating my Christian ethic by doing it. Because the truth is, I am going to turn this. You ask me what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to turn it into the world's best compost, because I'm from carbon capture compost. I'm going to turn it into the world's best compost, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Whether it's coming through the south end of that northbound pig, or whether it's coming out of that chicken, it is going to be composted one way or another. Okay? Now, Michelle, you want to handle this part here. This is a video we're probably not going to go to that long. I hate watching myself, and I hate hearing myself. But there's a point I'm trying to make here. Okay, so in a nutshell, I'm cutting that short a little bit because this is stuff you could access. Okay. Yeah, I cut that short because I know we're getting kind of queasy on time. Sorry, y'all. Long story short, I'm basically showing you right there how I do it. So let's say it's a chicken. Typically, the golden number is 1/4 pound per bird per day. All we do is put the wet weight in there, achieve the same results. Now, within a chicken tractor on steroid system, like I said, we can talk forever and a day about how to do pigs, chickens. Those are all day-long classes. But I want to focus right now on the chicken tractor on steroids. It was first conceived by a guy named Carl Hammer of Vermont Composting up in Vermont, clearly. And then Jeff Lawton, the great permaculture designer in Australia, came, saw it, and here's what it does in a nutshell. We got the goods, and we got plenty of playlists on our YouTube channel to show you. And believe me, this is by no means a means to get you to go subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm just saying, if you want to see it in great detail, I cannot possibly explain it I'm covering way too much. This whole class would have to have been about this, so I can only get you the highlights. Here's what this system produces. Anywhere between 1 to 3 cubic yards of compost a week. Yeah, I know you're thinking, how's that possible? Little to no protein required, because guess what? In those compost piles, they derive all of their protein out of the doggone piles. So you don't need to provide protein, just carbs. In fact, you will find out within this system, because I don't have it up here, in this system they will produce, if there are egg layers in this system, not only do they produce 10% more, which ought to be an indication that, there's something that really works in this system. Little to no protein required, free eggs, free meat, if you raise meat birds in this system, which we have. You can use it as a very utilitarian area where they till up the ground, and then as you go behind them, you can take those compost piles, spread them out, start your garden right where the chickens were. How efficient is that? You can even have your pigs go ahead first, have your chickens go behind, leave the composting element behind, and then bam, you're off and running. Yard and garden waste, they can all go within this system. The chickens will turn that into compost. And then byproducts of the animal processing. Like I said, I hate the word butcher, but I don't really know. I can say abattoir or whatever the case may be, but universally everybody understands what that is. We do it responsibly, but all the byproducts, we feed everything to chickens but chicken. Everything to pigs but pig. That's it in a nutshell. So this system, this is like a visual of it. So imagine, here's your chicken tractor up here. It started down here, and then every week it's moving through the landscape. You're taking the composting element within the system, throwing it on each side of the garden as it goes through the system, okay? And our system at the house is a very different thing. Remember I told you we have a combination of like 10 different people all within our systems? So we do it a very different way. And I'll just briefly cover this. I think what would have been more helpful maybe for next year is if I could do part 1 and part 2 of something like this. Would anybody find that helpful? Yeah. Okay. So here's the dog we take to the hunt. Imagine an orchard just like this, because this is what we have 8 miles from here. Okay? So we have this chicken tractor on steroids that tractors through this landscape. Now, around each tree, this is a fruit tree, nitrogen fixer. Every third tree is a nitrogen fixer. This, trust me, y'all, I can't give you the full extent of what this is. But just know that on each side of this driveway, which we have here, is an orchard. Now, our chickens are working through this system. Every time they make a cubic yard or 3 cubic yards of compost, it gets put around these trees or within these perennial systems. What's cool about perennial systems is that once we put them in and they're established, they kind of handle themselves. Kind of like your fruit trees. You don't plant a fruit tree every year, right? Well, that's why we're making these things more efficient. Where you have an annual garden, you see, that you got to plant every year, we're doing the same thing with perennial systems. Okay? Make sense? Okay. But you have options. You can even go through, let's just say this didn't exist. You can have this system go through and then just plant right behind it. However you want to go about that. So, I'll just briefly cover this because most people are not, pigs are the gateway drug, chickens are the gateway drug. But they're basically raised on pasture. There's another way of doing it where, let's say you do have a small acreage or not acreage, let's say you have a backyard, because it can literally be done holistically in a backyard if you take the right dog to the hunt. And let's just say this is your backyard. And let's just say little Mr. and Mrs. Pig, because you should never just raise one. They always kind of need, unless they're pets or something, you want to have.
Well, she had friends, but we moved here a year and a half ago, and she just came up from Florida 6 months ago. So she'll be getting her friends soon.
No judgment at all.
She definitely, you could tell she's sadder. I spend more time with her. She's a companion animal for sure.
Don't tell her over there because she just picked up another feral cat. This cat was as feral as Bill Clinton on Epstein Island. And now this thing's sleeping in the bedroom. She's got this thing sleeping in the doggone bedroom like nothing I've ever seen before. So little pig is in this part of the property. Remember I told you? What's everybody laughing about? Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so let's just say you got pig right here, okay? Well, you can't move them because you're in a city lot. So, remember, bring the right dog to the hunt. So, if I can't move that pig, and it doesn't have a carbonaceous diaper in the form of this forest, well, I can bring that forest to him. Remember, you're going around collecting all those leaves just like I am, right? Yeah. So, your pig's out here, and we put a little bit of
wood chip mulch.
Wood chip mulch, or whatever the case may be. It could be leaf litter. It's carbon. It's going to suck up all the nasty smell. You should never smell your animals. That's another thing altogether. So, I'm a little pig out here. Oink, oink. This is my area. And let's say it's plenty. I got the food and the water I need. You're feeding me every day. Everything's cool. But all you do is every so often you smell even the slightest bit of something sour, throw more carbon in. So by the time that pig's life is being treated to a certain extent like a pet, and that carbonaceous diaper keeps rising. So it's called the deep bedding method. Works with chickens and pigs. And it's if you have it in a small area, that is a good, honest, practical way to make that happen. But forest raised pork, that's what we have at our place. And in fact, we've given away, 3 pigs so far this year? Yeah, we have so much meat in the freezer right now. Because these systems are so abundant. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying that the abundance is so great. Remember, earth care, people care, abundance given to the previous two. There's a whole lot of people out there that are food insecure, we hear these days, right? So if I can feed them for free, we got 2 more pigs we're about to process. One of them's going to go to some folks down the road, and then it's going to be another person. We're giving away food because the utility of these animals is more important to me than putting more meat in the freezer. They basically eat what chickens eat. They eat what's on the forest floor. Chicken and beef is on the menu for pigs. So basically they eat everything but pigs. Okay, here's another video, and this is, Michelle, go ahead and cue this one up real quick. This is an example. This is the chicken tractor on steroid system. And I'll kind of narrate part of it as we go along. These are compost. Compost pile that's finished. Now you're going to see a poultry net. This is where the chickens are at. So there's one that's a week away from being finished. 2 weeks away from being finished. And you see it's less refined. That's a week old. You can see the difference if you're wrong.
They don't jump over the fence?
No, we clip their wings.
Oh, dang. How many chickens are that?
That's their carbonaceous diaper for the week. We pull that out and we put it into their compost cage. That's what they sleep on every day. We add more carbon. See me dump that in that cage. Wait, hold on a minute.
That's a week old.
That's 1 week old. Michelle's wetting it down, and then now, next week. Here we go. For those of you that are new to this system, this chicken tractor on steroid system, they typically get fed in their compost cage. And they're wondering, it's a Pavlovian response to some extent. But you can also see them working these piles. This is the beauty of this system, y'all. We provide a little bit of carbs, and they largely get all of their protein from these piles. They eat the biota, those microorganisms, those little things in there that provide to them the very best protein on the planet. And we're going to show you why when we make that transition from exclusively meat bird to layers. You're going to see a couple of them. All right. Yeah, we could go on it. That's good.
That was good. That was good to see.
It was good to see.
Yeah,
see, essentially what that is within that system, and it can also be done in a static sense. So, like I told you, where you have a pig in a confinement area and you just add more carbon, you could do the same exact thing with chickens. And then when you do it over, let's say, 6 months or a year, let's say you're on regular ground, and by the time you're done, it's up to here, pull that away, you're going to have the best doggone compost you've ever seen. Yeah. But we teach another way of composting. It's called the Berkeley method, and it's 18 days. We literally start with bare stuff, and then 18 days later, we got finished compost. Within this chicken tractor on steroid system, it takes 30 days, but let me just back you up a little bit. This Berkeley method, we would have had to put our hands flipping piles 9 times roughly in 18 days, whereas we only put our hands on it in this method 4 times once a week. 4 times, and in 30 days you have finished compost. It's even better than it was in the Berkeley method. So it is a little more, the more holistic you become, the more labor intensive it becomes. But a lot of us these days have more time than money, right? So it's systems like this. And like I said, I know each element that I presented today is an 8-hour course. And I'm sorry if I can't, I'm going to leave a few stones unturned. But in a nutshell, that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you feed your animals for free. Any, well, I know you had questions. Now you can't get ahead. Now you can't get ahead because there's no more slides.
I was just going to ask, when you trade a service, a one-time service with these like stores or restaurants or whatever, like replacing their ceiling tiles or whatever, do you find that leads to is an entrance to an ongoing relationship, or do you find that the store owners are then kind of cool, now I want something else? I only ask because I have a service I can trade, and I kind of don't want to get stuck in a place where I'm
that's a really good question.
To continue.
Okay, so that same bakery. Okay, so I did it out of the kindness of my heart because these were good people, and they couldn't afford to get this place unless, because you can find bones of bin Laden easier than you can find an electrician these days. So I go in there and I solve their problem, not with any expectation of anything, because I already have more than enough. I did it because these are good people, and they couldn't afford it otherwise. But it has led to them saying, okay, we have a little bit of, we just opened up this place. Now that we have this, let's go ahead and we need something else done. And I'm like, okay, when I get time, I'll be over there to do it. Now there's this other almost crisis that's going on there, right? Well, it's a little bit hyperbolic. They have advances they want to make there, but I am as busy as all get out. I mean, it's just going to have to work when I get there. But it doesn't. They understand that I've already been a tremendous blessing to them, and there's no quid pro quo. It's like we're friends now, you know. And so I give them, whenever I process, let's say, Katahdin sheep, which is the best lamb. Put it this way, it's so good, if I were to put Kobe beef here and Katahdin sheep next to it and did a blind taste test, you would pick that Kobe beef. You would pick the Katahdin probably over that Kobe beef. But I give them this kind of stuff because they're also chefs. So there's a relationship that's built on there, but yes, it can be abused. It can be abused, and we can provide a recent example of how that's been
I would say don't even start with offering the service at first, especially if you make the case that, hey, I'm sequestering this carbon for you guys. This is less that you have to send to the landfill. So maybe don't start with offering your service.
You're going to have to feel it out every single time. Just look around what their needs are. The easiest thing to do is, believe it or not, especially if it's in Asheville, just say, hey, I'll just do a sweep around this place. It'll take you 5-10 minutes. Just go around there and pick up the trash. Get those little, you're squeezing thing. You don't have to bend down. You pick up the trash, put it in the bag, spend 5 minutes.
Carry a bucket, it's easier with the tongs.
Or a bucket, there you go.
Yeah, in the bag.
So I have ducks, and I'm wondering if providing protein through the compost pile method would be something that would be successful for them. Like not necessarily in a chicken tractor because they're free range, but if it was something that they would utilize, if I just put it closer to them.
William would probably, he's worked a lot more with ducks in Australia, so he might have an answer.
We didn't give them access to any of the compost or anything like that. We just kept them moving. We just kept them moving, and like if you notice that there's areas with higher amounts of bugs and stuff like that, the movement is like free ranging is not necessarily the thing you want to do with most animals, because then they're going to go around and eat just the favorites of everything. Absolutely. So if you can direct their efforts in a fence and then move them frequently, then I think that'll probably be better option. Okay. I don't know if they'll interact with compost piles.
I was just wondering, especially through the winter and stuff, when it comes to like offering additional protein sources and things like that, the compost pile on there.
She's asking, I'm sorry?
What are the best bone sauce?
Everything.
Any bone.
Any bone whatsoever.
Do you have that for sale?
I do on our website. I didn't bring any today, but we have some at our website. I didn't want to come in here looking like some sleazy salesman or whatever. But it will, there's nothing, there is not, you cannot buy anything that works better for deer and rabbits. But yeah, the bone sauce we use, I'm telling you, there's a whole ecosystem in that jar. And because it's very difficult to make, some of this stuff I have it on hand, sometimes not, but it is very, it's a long, hard commitment, and if it's not perfect, I'm not going to sell it. I'm not about to mess my reputation up because I'm putting out junk. But yeah, if you want something, you go to permapasturesfarm.com. Yep,
Thank you.
You bet.
Is your butchering class on there as well?
We have that for sale. We do that. We have our butchering class, we have an online version of it. We teamed up with Sow the Land, because he's a really good cinematographer. And we have an online course if you prefer to do that.
I want in-person.
Now, the in-person class, there's going to be one next week that the Holler Homestead is going to be doing. But the one we're going to be doing with Sow the Land, it's going to be 2 different weekends. One, we're going to scald the pig. The other, we're going to skin the pig. And that's going to be down at Sow the Land in Bostic, North Carolina.
Okay.
That's going to be, it's going to be at the end of April that we'll do that. So it will be butchery from start to finish. And when we do that thing, I guarantee you're going to walk out of there. We developed a way of butchery that is, it works no matter the animal. And it is with the highest respect. So if anybody eats meat and you want to go there and learn it, that's where we're going to be. Yeah, come down there. We'll
What's that called again?
I'm sorry?
What's the name of that called again?
Sow the Land.
Sow the land?
SOW, sow the land. But we, at our website, we'll announce it. I think in one of our next videos, we'll announce when that's going to be. Anybody else?
What was the other, you were speaking at something else with, who was it? Joel Salatin?
Oh, Joel Salatin, Farm Where You Live conference. I'm not even sure. That one's going to be in Asheville, actually. It has been historically in South Carolina.
I think it's April 11th, I think.
So Williams, he's going to be teaching there. I'll be teaching there. And then I'm going to be doing a hands-on class that I'm not quite sure what that's going to be, but that'll be nearby. And but honestly, this year, there's a whole lot going on in our farm. So this is like the last second to the last speaking engagement I'll be doing for this year. So from here on out, it's basically going to be, we're going to be building him an earthship home. So, you know, it's cool to be in a place where people know what that is.
You're doing it here now?
We're going to be doing it 8 miles from here. We're going to build him, he and his wife, an earthship. And, so that's going to be happening. Look, y'all, sorry to take up so much of your time. I hope you got something out.
Just real quick, y'all. Thanks for coming.